Well, one of the most concerning aspects of the freeway shootings is that targets appear to be completely random.
As we've told you, we have the one confirmed shooting today and at least 6 other reports of damage today that DPS is still investigating. But it's important to note that not all shattered windshields are caused by bullets.
CBS 5's Jason Valentine spoke with an expert, and Jason, he gave you some ways to tell if a windshield has been shot.
Right, Scene. You know, it's not uncommon at all to pick up a rock in your windshield as you're driving down the freeway. But right now, if you're going down the I-10, something as small as this chip can go from frustrating to scary considering everything that's going on. But there are a couple key differences you'll notice between a big rock or a bullet. You're driving down the I-10. Suddenly, something slams into your window with a loud smack. Was it a rock or was it a bullet?
They're going to sound the same. I mean, if you're driving down the road, a bullet hits the windshield or a rock hits the windshield, ultimately your first reaction, I've been shot.
Auto glass expert Jeffrey Roberts says windshields are built like a net.
A windshield is 2 pieces of glass with a laminate in between or plastic.
And because of that, there are some key differences between the look of rock damage or a bullet.
Chances are a bullet is actually going to make a hole through the windshield versus a rock isn't necessarily going to come through both pieces of glass and make a hole.
He demonstrated how hard something can hit your windshield and still not make a hole.
And that's what the point on this drill bit.
He says something like these pictures released by DPS definitely look like bullets hit this glass, while something like this...
It's one of those where I would say that it's probably a pretty good size rock or road debris.
But if you do think you've been shot at, it's still best to call the cops. By the way, we asked DPS, what should you do if you think you've been shot at? And the answer is go down to the next exit, pull off the freeway, and then call 911.
Jason, that's some good advice there. You want to get away from the possible shooter if there is one. So that was some good advice on what to do. Did DPS say anything about what they don't want people to do?
Absolutely, Chris. You don't want to just swerve right over to the side of the road. First of all, you could create a hazard. You could actually cause a crash doing that. And the other reason, as you mentioned, you could remain a target.
All right, Jason, some good advice there. Thank you.
Well, trying to catch the person or persons who are responsible for these shootings is an incredibly difficult task.
But we have some insight tonight into how investigators are taking on this task.
Morgan Lowe is here now with questions that investigators are asking tonight. Morgan?
Just think about it. 4.5 million people in this valley and thousands of cars on our freeways at any given time. But 2 questions will help investigators narrow down their search for the shooter. 11 confirmed shootings over 13 days and few clues.
There doesn't seem to be much of a pattern with regard to days, hours, vehicles struck.
Retired Tempe Police Sergeant Kevin Boontjer says one of the first questions investigators would ask is what is the trajectory of the bullets?
It starts to whittle down. Do we think it's a mobile shooter or do we think it's someone who's stationary?
Coming from up high would indicate the shooter is on a bridge, building, or overpass. From the side means the shooter may be in a car. Boontjer thinks the odds are the shooter is mobile.
You think that he's driving around?
I do.
The next question is what caliber of gun is being used. To answer that, investigators need bullet fragments.
Are we talking about the same bullets? If they're able to locate fragmentation and or pieces of bullet that have passed through these vehicles or are in the vehicles or whatever, and they find 2 different calibers, well, that's an issue.
And that could indicate more than one shooter or copycats. This is information investigators likely have right now but are not releasing.
Morgan, obviously you're well-sourced, local, state, federal law enforcement agencies. How are they going to catch this shooter?
Well, there are 2 most likely scenarios. The first is remember where this is happening, this busy freeway. Someone out there is going to see one of these shootings and likely call it in. The second is that someone out there knows who is doing this, and they're going to call the police in order to collect that $20,000 reward.
Yeah, and speaking of that $20,000 reward, as Morgan was just saying, solving the case could come down to a tip from one of you. If you see something suspicious, the number to call is right there on your screen. Remember, a $20,000 reward for information leading to an arrest.